So without further ado, I'd like to call upon the Prime Minister to open the government case and settle this. Here.
Opening government believes in two key premises in advancing our case. First and foremost, educational institutions should serve to redefine the notion of success when the definition of success proliferated by society and entrenched by educational institutions causes a problem. That notion of success not being inclusive to be enjoyed by entire citizenry in our society. Secondly, children being educated in the schools on our paradigm are able to contribute to society with their educational system, which educational institution has served in our society. Given these premises, we have 3 points of substantive material for opening up. First and foremost, I'm going to clarify the contextualized understanding of what is the notion of success which proliferated right now, and what kind of success that we're going to talk about and redefine as opening government. Second, we'll talk about how success as cooperation, willing to sacrifice myself in order to serve the need of others, benefit of others, is an essential ethos that we want to protect and defend on our side of the house, and thus beneficial. Last, we want to talk about how we can enjoy a successful life by society on our side. So, how do we operationalize our policy? We will tell children and the people that success is not about competing with others and making others loser in order for me to be success and not sacrifice themselves, and be securing and protecting my personal interests as a paramount perspective, as well as a yardstick to define our success. In contextual understanding right now, being successful debaters means breaking first, champion, and overall speaker, etc. Because people perceive success as in contrast to making others losers under status quo, and that's the kind of things that we are not talking about, not telling people as something successful on our society. Our policy would be done in education institution, obviously, where we have a mandatory education and at the point of finishing the mandatory education. So rather we would suggest on our side of the house, look, success as we envision is a successful person as a human being, as a good person as something successful in morally and ethos way on our side of the house. So essentially, to sum up the kind of success we're criticizing on our side of the house is immediate happiness as well as making others loser as success, but we rather contend and defend the immediate happiness being sacrificed for the sake of others in order for you to be a good human, to be a more cooperative and become peaceful to others is something successful life that we are going to defend on our side of the house. Given this precise definition as well as the world in which we envision our society, let's move on how the contextual knowledge as well as how our society is having a unpreferable notion of success proliferated in our society. The current contemporary media, as well as the daily experience of neo-libertarianism, tell us people that look, in order for you to be champion, in order for you to be successful in our life, you have to kick out others in order to defend yourself. That means that there's a precise notion that contemporary media is now talking about, for example, in the current economic structures, which strongly prefers in order to become successful by kicking out of others, monetary success, being rich, and etc. And furthermore, the social consequences of that strengthening that norm. For example, the people who are rich, who are constructing the gay community, for instance, seems the most successful individual in our society, for instance. We tell you that some consequences of the notion of that particular success we're talking about demonizes people and like ostracize people who are losers of our society. We do not want that people to be losers and not be inclusive under the notion of successful person on our side of the house. But rather, we will tell you people that as a countervailing narrative which any other institution cannot do and operationalize under our policy. Educational institution is the only one who can counter and get back, get out of that kind of problematic notion of success on our side of the house. Then, what is the defense? The criteria of defense of how success as a cooperation, as an ethos of self-sacrifice success is more justifiable. But any point?
By me not breaking in a debating tournament, I feel like a loser, but I get the incentive to try more and work harder and become more successful. Why do you kill this incentive on your side of the house and not define it as a different perspective of success?
I think people are motivated to cooperate and still continue on debating, not necessarily on the basis of winning the tournament, but rather sacrifice my argumentation to be used to others in order to flourish the community as a whole, in order sacrificing my techniques, for example, in order for future generation to help constructing their argumentation, etc. Serving to the other people's needs, for example, on the outside of the house, spiritually make people successful and make more human beings. And that's a comparative that you have to engage. But furthermore, the kind of success that you're going to defend is more relevant and more justifiable in us on your side of the house. So why success as cooperative as well as self-sacrifice serves a massive amount of social benefit that we're talking about and which cannot be done on that side of the house. The people who suffer from inequality, the people who suffer from global injustices or poverty, etc., is prohibited morally on the basis of success, which are understood right now to serve to the interests of the people who are most needy in our society. The current social narrative to oppose the global redistribution is precisely because my successful fruitful economic should not be sacrificed for others. It is my possession or my fruit, like money, the money in which I have possessed should not be sacrificed for the sake of others, because success means is that not sacrificing others. That serves these people who are literally dying. That serves the people who are suffering for malnutrition, as well as in poor infrastructure in many developing nations. We're more likely also in domestic situation that people who are suffering from inequality is more likely to serve to the inclusive narrative. Now, furthermore, the kind of success on that side of the house is pretty much determined by birth lottery on that side of the house. But we will also tell you that people, regardless of you being born in particular social circumstances, as you, as an individual, are willing to sacrifice themselves, you are able to be a good person. You are able to be successful on that side of the house. So from these reasons, in terms of inclusivity and countering the morally arbitrary ground on birth lottery, we are able to have more successful person feeling more successful in our society. What am I showing today? We are showing you how our policy of redefining the notion of success as self-sacrifice serves a more equal, inclusive, and more relevant and more real society happiness, and that's the ground opening government is supreme.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for his excellent remarks. I'd like to call up on the leader petition to open the oral case in 7 minutes. Here.
cooperation, the idea of donation are sometimes necessary. But they really haven't explained to you why the educational curriculum must do this at the point at which they instill this knowledge, right? Because like we say on our side of the house, like there are some like, actually, not just like one success story where they actually, they're kicking out in order to actually make them succeed. But we say like in the status quo, there are also other ways like in which success is measured. We don't see like any necessity as like how we take this notion. And even if there are, we say like the harms that is being produced by like, having children instill this mindset and having the mental captives or the metric within their mindset creates more harm in the society. I'm very proud to stand on the opposition. So 2 things I'm going to bring to you from the leader of opposition. First of all, how does this instill work, and like how from the perception of kids this is going to create to like the individual harm as well as a social problem. Second of all, like what is the role of the educational curriculum and how we cannot instill these things in the first place. But before that, like some rebuttals and some clarifications, right? So like what we support on our side of the house is that we're happy with teaching or acknowledging that like one of the various lifestyles like that sacrificing themselves in order to succeed in life is something like one of the lifestyles that they can actually pursue, right? But we're also happy to teach various other lifestyles that we say, right? Like what we oppose is this unique instill part where the children would have this metric inside their head and say that this is the only way that in order to succeed or in order for me to actually being seen as success, this is the only way to do so, right? And we say like the definition of sacrifice themselves like not only includes like giving food, water to like other people, but also includes sacrifice yourself in order to achieve into like better goals and everything, right? That means that like it's also about like sacrificing yourself to work hard in order to actually succeed in life. We say like these are 2 definitions that we can actually present, and also some rebuttals, right? So they said like the rhetoric right now that is prevalent in the status quo is that like you have to kick out others in order to be successful, right? But first of all, we say it's not always true, right? Because the reason like Bill Gates and Emma Watson are seen as like successful people are not because they actually have like they kicked out other people, but they actually succeeded on their own and those kind of things, right? And also we say like Mother Teresa, Malala Yousafzai, those people like outstanding leaders from NGOs and NPOs who actually help those people in need are always like also celebrated in our society. We say like it's not like the only case that the European government is talking about. We say in the status quo there are many kind of societies, many kind of perceptions for these people to say that no, there are other types of success. We can actually sometimes donate, we can actually succeed and self-actualize for yourself by being a soccer player and like pursuing your own interests, right? But first of all, like about the harm and the perception of kids, right? So let's look at the fact that instill is not just teaching, but it's like an active brainwashing to an extent that children believe that this is the only way to succeed in their life, right? That means that it becomes more significant than the other ideas within children's mindset. It means that the children will actually believe in this more and like at the point at which this idea is actually instilled within the formative years of children, right? That means that this becomes metric within the children, right? In order to succeed, the active sacrifice is necessary. It's active sacrifice. Spending your time for other people are actually necessary, or sacrificing yourself into studying so hard in order to succeed becomes necessary. That becomes like an automatic mindset between other people. No, thank you. At the point at which this idea becomes an absolute idea by the fact of the instilling. So what's the harm that actually we can expect under the government's strategy, right? We say, first of all, because it becomes a metric within the mindset, there is a notion that success, in order to succeed, you have to sacrifice, right? We say that, there are some people who can't sacrifice yourself to other people, or who can't sacrifice into yourself because of your structural problem. For example, poor, right? Poor people can't donate and all those kind of things because no, thank you. You structurally can't do that, right? Girls, when they're in the context where men are prevalent, you can't really succeed in your life when you don't have enough resources, enough time, enough money, right? But because this structural problem is neglected, right? Because you can have that rhetoric and say it's your own personal problem that you didn't sacrifice yourself into doing this, that you didn't succeed in life. We say this kind of marginalization or into the children's time, the bullying can occur, right, for these people, right? But second of all, we say no, thank you, not yet. This sacrifice marginalizes those people who don't want to sacrifice yourself into doing something good, or who don't want to sacrifice yourself into devoting time, right? Because what's the problem of you thinking that I want to be a soccer player, I want to succeed as a pianist, Like by not like cooperating, actually contributing to the society in that way, right? We said it's also legitimate to self-actualize yourself in that area, in that persuasion. But we said those people are not celebrated under their side of the house when this becomes the only metric within their mindset, right? But in the long term, after this one, in the future, what's gonna happen is that because you have the mindset that you have to sacrifice yourself in order to succeed, and that's the only way to live your life, right? That means for example, things such as overwork, things such as those kind of illegitimate ideas that say that you have to overwork because of other people, or you have to overwork because of yourself in order to succeed. That becomes a legitimate idea, right? We say that is particularly bad because that doesn't lead to social benefit or the individual's happiness, right? We say this notion is more important or can be guaranteed under our side of the house when we don't have this instilling.
Okay, we're more than happy to teach many ways to sacrifice something. It's not only about monetary support. How do you respond?
Okay, the thing is, they're happy to teach, yes, but they're also at the same time instilling these mindsets, right? That means at one particular moment, one of the ideas becomes more prominent than the others. So let's look at the educational curriculum, right? We say it's not first of all, the premise of the education, it's not to try to achieve social benefit, but it's to actualize your own personal goal, right? Because if the social benefit was something so important, we wouldn't be teaching music, art, and those kind of things. That doesn't lead to concrete benefits, right? But we said that we're actually able to guarantee all kinds of choices in order to actualize what you believe in, what you pursue in your life. That's why we teach math, because that might be necessary for you, right? That's why we teach the right kind of education, nutrition, and those kind of things. But so we're happy to teach that there are various lifestyles, and you can choose on your own, how to live your life. But at the point at which this becomes instilling, right? We say it actually takes away or limits the choice of you trying to pursue your life in one single form, right? We say that's abhorrent in terms of educational curriculum, right? So we say what the opening opportunities wants to do, right, is people having different various lifestyles and people celebrating those ideas, not just one form of one form of sacrifice, one form of success that can only be guaranteed under opening government side. We're very proud of those.
Thank you, leader of opposition, for providing excellent remarks. I'd like to invite the Deputy Prime Minister to extend the order's case in 7 minutes. Here you go.
For extensions today, I'm going to talk about how this kind of policy is recasting the ways in which education can transmit particular values, and this reprioritization of values that education is most interested in disseminating to the children who are exposed to it, is going to increase social happiness, it's going to increase individual happiness, and it's going to contribute to better, more effective solutions to collective action problems like global warming, for example. First, there are a few points of rebuttal. First, they begin with a huge principal concession when they tell us that our values are great, it's just that education is the wrong means, because somehow they live in a world where education is totally and perfectly value neutral. No, education contains value judgments literally all the time. For example, a sense of national consciousness. Go to the US, go to any American classroom, hear the Pledge of Allegiance every single morning. Kindergarten in Japanese classrooms probably analogous too, right? Education is always utilized by societies, by the wider community, to promote a definition of the common interest, promote particular values that that community believes to be essential to its propagation, its survival, its continuation in a form that those future members recognize consistent with the present members. This is a particularly good value, as you conceded in the first 5 seconds of your speech, and we're quite happy to promote this kind of cooperative self-sacrifice and love. That's fantastic. Next, they tell us that, well, there's no rationale for this kind of change. Well, maybe we'll give you two to reinforce what we've already heard. First, the unhappiest societies in the world tend to be those that are the most individualistic. Like happiness rates in the US, places like Japan, where the education system is massively competitive, where your success is determined to a large extent by class ranking, which is an explicitly competitive metric, compare with somewhere like Norway. Norway is a country which has an explicitly socialist ethos, and socialism means contributing a huge amount of your taxes, a huge amount of your wealth, sacrificing your autonomy to use the resources you've earned for your own purposes in order to maximize the benefits of the community. maximize the services that can be provided to the least advantage. We're happy to redefine success. It means that in the long term, we get a lot of young people who turn into adults who are happy to make that kind of sacrifice, that kind of contribution to a stronger state that's better able to deal with the problems of disadvantage. And moreover, mankind faces massive problems. Things like global warming, for example, that threaten all of our futures. And the cause of these problems is overwhelmingly selfishness determined by collective action problems. So, for example, why the hell should I give up my car if no one else is going to? Why should I sacrifice my right to have the autonomy to travel around and experience that if no one else is going to? And that narrative, where success is equated with having as much of your own share of resources, maximizing your own share of resources to the implicit detriment of other members of your community, competing with them, beating them, being the best, that is a narrative that we reject to the extent that it legitimizes those kinds of selfish behaviors. It says they're a natural course to take in order to survive and advance yourself in that society. We're much happier, again, to allow for people to be better able to engage with solving these problems, recognizing that other members of their community are willing to make similar sacrifices, and that's how education works to spread these values. They tell us also that there are multiple definitions of success that exist, and people like Malala Yousafzai, Mother Teresa are celebrated, so it's all fine in the status quo. I would ask you to look at who has the real power in the world. It's overwhelming people who have succeeded through competitive means, who fought right to the very top. People like Donald Trump, for example, not exactly a shining beacon of self-sacrifice. The people who they talk about are treated as exceptions. They're glorified, but people who are the norm in terms of actually making decisions, allocating positions of power and resources, are people who are overwhelmingly selfish and committed to that status quo value context. And finally, they sort of half proposed a second definition of sacrifice. Maybe second speaker will substantiate that. They told us that maybe sacrifice is about working hard and sacrificing yourself in that sense. They didn't offer a rationale for why the definition is better, so it seems to drop out of the debate. So, increasing social happiness. We tell you that under status quo, in most societies, Japan is quite relevant, there is a fundamentally individualistic ethos in terms of how you advance, how you succeed in the world. We are expected to fight for yourself and compete with other members of the community in order to do that, for a limited stock of social resources, social primary goods. So, this competitive ethos where you're exhorted to be the best throughout your educational process, we say leads to a sense of alienation from your community and from your society. Why? Well, most people, for a start, are losers by this definition of success. Most people do not achieve social advancement in a pyramid-shaped society. Most people ultimately feel like they are the ones who have been sacrificed to further the ambitions of those who are at the top. But even those who are at the top feel alienated as well. They don't feel like they're connected to a community that they see themselves as superior to. They don't understand how they could possibly have a stake in improving the fortunes of that community. They're less inclined to care and sacrifice a greater portion of their own resources in terms of higher taxes for a community that they don't identify with anymore, because they see themselves as better. I've succeeded, therefore I'm a better person. That standard is not a standard that we accept. The standard of success that says individual wealth, individual power, individual status. We don't accept that being allowed to continue anymore. That kind of narrative permeating every political institution, every business. Talk to children as well, through the media, through pop culture, and yes, through education. Education is a history of winners. If you go to history, if you go to politics classes, if you go to even a science class, you'll hear all about how the best people in this field did all these sorts of things. Everyone else, the masses, were essentially irrelevant. And moreover, this idea that class ranking is so determinative of your future, explicitly comparative measure designed to show I am the best, that puts you in an adversarial situation relative to the other members of the community. The people you should be willing to feel a stakeholder in the fortunes of. Instead, you're incentivized to fight against them for control of the commanding heights intellectually of that particular community. Yes?
So if you say that individualism is so prominent and this is the only way, why in the status quo are people recognizing the problems of the environment, poverty, and trying to tackle these problems in the status quo?
Then, trying to tackle, not actually tackling, right? Look at the feeble attempt of the Kyoto Protocol. Look at the Paris Convention, which Donald Trump is about to withdraw the US from, right? As a great example on our side. These problems are not being solved because collective action problems only get solved in a value context where other people are expected to make the same sacrifices as you, right? If you are the only person making a sacrifice, then your contribution to the total scale of that problem as an individual is minuscule. So we need to recast the entire value context. How does that work? Education obviously gets to children when they are at their most impressionable stage of life, right? Introduces a key counter-narrative that hasn't previously existed in a context where individualistic pursuit of success and glory is reified. This means that now we're going to be able to teach children to sacrifice themselves for others, and they're probably going to get rewarded for the behaviors that they show when they're influenced by that as well, because their parents are probably quite happy when when they see their children like suddenly contributing to housework and tasks, all that sort of thing, even little gestures can be informed by these new values. We don't think that there's a principled issue, like I say, with education containing value judgments. We're quite happy to promote a value that we see as constructive to the future of society. We think the immediate outcomes of this value being more widely disseminated, more widely influential in terms of the minds, decisions made by these children who grow up to be adults, that's a positive on our side. And moreover, in the long term, in dealing with these big problems that I've talked about, these children grow up, they become the next generation of adults. They're the children who dictate the terms of exchange in society one day in the future. They set the norms, right? They are better able to recast society as a more cooperative enterprise, like short of this kind of individualism that's put us in such a predicament where we are unable to resolve massive social problems. We're able to better deal with the cause of it, social alienation and unhappiness, by making people feel more connected to their communities, more connected to their peers, and less invested solely in themselves to the detriment of the interests of those around them. And we're better able to deal with these big social issues as well. So for those two reasons, yes, I propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister, for his excellent remarks. I'd like to invite the Deputy of Opposition to extend over.
Mr. Speaker, we think that education should be flexible, right? We don't think that education curriculum should be like teaching people about what is right or what is wrong, right? Because we think that there are various ways of thinking and how people perceive is totally different, like the Prime Minister has already conceded, right? We think that success is not only the part of your life, right? But we think that failures are also associated when you're pursuing your life. But we think that it kills the incentive of people to actually face failure, but as well as to face success in their own way under the opening government's paradigm, and that is why we are very proud to oppose from the opening opposition, right? Independent reputations to the previous speaker and the whole opening government, and then I'm going to move on to talking about mainly three things, right? I'm going to further extend on the principle about what education curriculums are and how they're all to be, but furthermore, telling you about why it's extremely important for the government to actually set an educational curriculum that actually allows children to form flexibility and allow various ways of thinking in terms of tackling with their future and for a better success that is defined in their own individual way. But second, I'm going to talk about how we are on our side of the house better pursue inclusivity in society in the sense of how we allow different various success in different needs of each individual, but also allow failure and also allow various kinds of failures and people to actually stand up and go out and pursue their success from any point of their life. But thirdly, comparisons of the both sides paradigm. But before that, reputations, right? So they told us about how reading the Pledge of Allegiance every single morning in the United States of America or singing the national anthem in Japan is instilling nationalism, right? We don't think that it's actually instilling nationalism because we don't think we're not singing I love Japan inside that song, right? We think it's an indirect message that is actually trying to tell children about the importance of countries to some extent, but we don't think it's a direct message saying that you have to love your country or you have to face your flag and say this 14 sentences every single morning to show nationalism, right? We think that it's a totally different story. But secondly, we think that the happiness they told us about happiness rates and and whatnot, but we think that it's not automatic because we think that there are other exceptional examples such as the country of Bhutan, whereas the happiness is defined in a different way. But thirdly, they somehow talked about environment problems, right? We think that, as my partner has already pointed out in her POI, we think that environmental problems are already being tackled under a paradigm, right? We don't think that we think that maybe it's not enough, or we think that these problems are not being tackled completely, but we think that movements are still occurring under our paradigm. It's very important to show us why they need to actually instill these kind of education education in order for like more, like, in order for like a movement that's already existing to somehow occur, right? And that's why we think, and furthermore, we think that rather on our side of the house, when there's like a wealth and like, wealth gap between the rich and the poor, we think that we have more tactics to actually like, tackle these kind of environment problems when there's like, financial like, capability for like some group of people, whereas like, whereas the financial like, whereas the financial capability is somehow diverged and no one like can actually tackle efficiently, right? And that's why we think that their side fails. No. Moving on to about the educational curriculum, right? We, as my partner has told you, we don't teach one value or what is right or wrong on like, on possible like swaying ideas in the society. No. Because we think that like, because we think for instance, we do teach like, derivative formula or historical year is because like those are like, true and fact. However, we don't teach like that like hard work will always pay off or being nice is always good and like morality classes in elementary school, no, right? Because we think that the government is responsible for actually, deciding on the educational curriculum where like, children can actually like, form like, have like the basic like, understanding, but at the same time, when they in the duration of growing up, they can like extend their ideas based on like the basic that they've actually learned in their education, and like actually flexibly decide things when they actually face problems or when they actually face circumstances, right? So yeah, that's why we think that the educational curriculum should not be instilling one value, because we think, as my partner has told you, it massively affects these like children, because when they're very small, we think that education plays a big role, and we think that the effect is humongous, and we think that they're going to be like deprived of the chance to think more flexibly, right? No. And that's why we think that this is extremely important. But moving on to my second issue about inclusivity in society, but before that, opening, yes.
So specify other conception of success and what is the moral standard to defend that.
Okay, I'll explain that later. So the OG talked about how by instilling these kind of messages, one must like sacrifice, by instilling that one must sacrifice for success, we don't think doesn't mean like it automatically guarantees success for these people, and we think that the government has to concede to that, right? We have to acknowledge that there are people who are actually going to fail, even if they actually receive this kind of like message in education. Why is that? Because when there are like people who fail, they're going to blame the education because they won't know or like think about what is the reason for the failure. But furthermore, we think that even if they don't blame the education, like they're going to like further blame themselves for not being able to sacrifice themselves enough, not being able to like try hard enough, right? This is what like leads to like overworking or overstressing themselves out, and we think that it's like we think that it's wrecking that individual to like to the maximum extent, right? But no, when what they like learn doesn't like come true. Furthermore, we think that they become more grumpy and lose the incentive to like stand up again on their feet and think about how they can like rejuvenate their like career or like career path, right? But when they when they lose the incentive, they often like they try to like but on our side, when they actually like lose or face failure, they try to think about like the reasons instead of like blaming others. But we think that furthermore, we still keep the incentive for people to try harder, right? But at the end of the day, when people fail, on our side, we think that it's much better, because even if you're like even if you fail, we think that we think that on our side of the house, these people can pursue happiness under their verdict and under their metric, right? You can fight for it in the way that you think is good, and even if that success is like different from the societal norm that they're talking about, as long as at least they're going to be happy about pursuing the happiness that they want in their own way, right? Regardless of whether that matches the social norm or not. But under their paradigm, we think that success is only achieved in one way. So as long as they don't achieve that success in their way, we think that that is going to be an automatic failure, right? We welcome various success from sacrifice or from standing up from hell bottom, and we think that this is what should be called an educational success. We are very proud of those. Thank you.
THBT position for rights and remarks, so I'm not invited to no comment for initiate this case in 7 minutes. Get
our society. Opening government told us that being kind and being friendly is some kind of a success, Mr. Speaker. But we believe that is not the only success we see from the closing government. We don't think the materialistic success is something bad. We don't think that competition is bad as well. But we are going to prove in the closing government, but why instilling this kind of narrative will allow individuals to take many kind of choices because they think there are people who are backing up behind you. Because there are going to be many like individuals who are going to sacrifice for others, and having the unconditional love and this kind of backups is going to make individuals able to make many kind of choices, many kind of actions, which leads to, which directly clashes to the opening opposition's flexibility principles. I'm going to rebut first to the opening opposition. Firstly, Masako-chan told you that there are like people who cannot sacrifice for other people. As I have told you in my POI, we don't believe that only the materialistic support or the monetary support is going to exist in our paradigm. In our model, we're more than happy to like say that anything can be a sacrifice. For example, time, effort, love, like maybe money can be included in in those kind of sacrifices. But that's only one sphere of those kind of things. But we're more than happy to teach many ways to sacrifice. But second, they told us about overworking. There is a law, Mr. Speaker. There is a labor protection law that will limit these kind of overworking. Therefore, we don't see any harms coming from their side of the house. But third, they said that blaming education is some kind of harm. We don't see any like mutually exclusivity, Mr. Speaker, because on their side of the house, they're also going to instill like many kind of the values. Maybe nationalism, maybe like no thanks. Studying more is going to like lead to success. But ultimately, Mr. Speaker, maybe you like entered Todai and you are being successful. But others, there are many people who are failing Todai, even though they have made they have a much effort and much time to study for the entrance exam. But really, there are people who are blaming these kind of education, but we don't see the practical harm that is going to harm in the first place. Moving on to my substantive extension, actually. Why rather is going to make more individuals who will make an effort throughout this kind of installation, and that directly clashes to the opening opposition. So firstly, Mr. Speaker, why may you make an effort? It's because there is always, based on someone's sacrifice that backs you up behind you. Because making an effort is always risky. There isn't 50-50 whether you are going to success through that effort or fail and wash away the effort you have made all the monies or etc. As a consequence, those individuals are too afraid to take the first step forward. They cannot make an easy effort because you will always see that there isn't success, but there is a failure as well. For example, why I can continue making an effort in debating is because I have my lovely ICUDS who are always there, even though I don't break in the tournament. I don't necessarily have to be a breaking adjudicator. I don't necessarily have to be a breaking debater, but they are always there for me as a family of the ICUDS. Throughout this motion, we can make more people who are going to be actively sacrificing individual themselves will increase and having an unconditional love for me, Mr. Speaker. Because actively sacrificing individuals' time and effort, you can make a strong bond between the relationships. Because if Chiaki is making sacrificing her time for me to prep or timing for effort for me to become a good debater, maybe we can have a good relationship that she's making a sacrifice for me, and because that is maybe I can sacrifice for her. And this kind of collateral to mutually dependency is going to happen, Mr. Speaker. We believe that is going to lead to more confidence toward individuals, because the individuals will going to know that even though I fail, there are people who are going to back up behind me. No thanks, not yet. So that leads to OO's flexibility principle, right? Because if you are going to be flexible and choosing many kind of choices, which means that there are going to be more chances to fail at the same time, Mr. Speaker. So it leads to the individuals' confidence if you have many people around you to backing up unconditionally, Mr. Speaker. So we believe that leads to it leads to the state interest as well. That is flexibility, or this kind of friendship is not the only aim of the state or the only aim of the education. The education is also based on state interest, Mr. Speaker, because the state wants to make these kind of efficient individuals who are going to be the good labor force, who are going to invent many things, who are going to be a good engineer. But these kind of making these individuals who are going to make an effort is going to lead to more confidence of the individuals and more chance to try something, Mr. Speaker. Maybe there are people who are going to try to invest in new medicines or invent more good cars or those kind of things, right? That leads to more profit of the corporate tax or more profit to the budget, and that leads to the interest of the state. We believe that it's actually good. Go closing.
Yes, ICUDS is a very nice place in status quo without having any narratives. Why that is the most relevant reason to support this motion?
No, that's going to increase in our in other kind of communities as well. That was my point. You have to listen to me. So second, problem of the current society. Second extension, that is less support to the minorities. Why the affirmative action and the support of the minorities is not progressing under the status quo is because individuals easily compare the action and the consequences. For example, why the affirmative action don't progress is because majority groups will be excluded in change of the minorities, and supporting further affirmative action can lead to less benefit, less social success. People are fundamentally selfish. People easily act based on your interests. People tend to do something that only benefit yourself, which leads to less support to disabled minor race because of the violation of the numbers. After they give this proposal, by instilling this narrative, we can send a strong message that the action you have is thinking something as unbeneficial is not necessarily true, but rather leads to more success, because we can't change human nature being selfish, Mr. Speaker. Why is this something as an educational entity to pursue? It's because the current moral education is ultimately failing. But at the same time, fact that the current education is doing moral education is based on the reason that they see the value in it. Therefore, the opposition must concede that instilling moral as much as possible is important as the educational entity. It is not perfect, you have to solve it. We're more than happy to stand in the closing guard.
Thank you, Member of Government, for correcting this. I'd like to invite the Member of Opposition to open to discuss 7 minutes here.
Opening opposition narrow the debate that the people who have monetary capacity can succeed in government paradigm, right? As the closing opposition, we would like to extend and further analyze, and not only from the economic perspective, but also there are people who cannot succeed because of they have a lack of capacity. People who cannot sacrifice themselves because of lack of capacity or soul force, right? That's the career extension coming from the closing opposition. I have 2 things to talk about in my speech. Firstly, I'm going to talk about why certain children who have no capacity to sacrifice themselves would be undermined in the government paradigm, which will directly clash to opening government case. But secondly, I'm going to also talk about how education narrative will be operating in society, because the government side seemingly standing a huge assumption that those narratives would only be would be also workable for a minority or souls, right? That's the extension coming from the closing opposition. Moving on to my first argument, all rebuttals will be integrated in my later argument. Okay, moving on to my first argument. Why certain children who have no capacity to sacrifice themselves will be undermined, right? The opening government, Fujita sound characterized like the success method of debating is not getting overruled the speaker or not win the championship or so, right? But those kind of things are only the gift But this is a method, like he can actually give the technique to the juniors or so forth. Right? This is the technique that he has actually. That's the reason why Sawa-san or Fujita-san has succeeded in debate society. But actually, there's some has actually ignoring those who cannot do it, right? Because the freshman like me actually have no technique to sacrifice myself for other debaters or so forth, right? In the situation, firstly, I have to win every tournament and to be famous in the debate society. Otherwise, for the certain people, it's kind of necessary for them to compete and win in this debate, not debate, but in society, right? In the situation with being famous in the debate education for those kind of authority is necessary for them. That's why we say that sacrificing themselves isn't necessary. Cannot be a definitely necessary factor for them to be succeeded in society. Because winning in the competition is an incentive for those kind of people to get more and more ability, right? That's why in that situation, sacrificing themselves isn't a necessary factor. Now, what would happen if those kind of things would be taught in a school, right? No, thank you. Because we think that there will be the polarization between the people who have the capacity and people who do not have the capacity, right? How? Because the people who have a skill, that is to say, students who with the higher academic skill, and also people who have no skill, is like students who have less academic skill compared to other students. In that situation, teachers, well, since they believe that sacrificing is important because of education curriculum system, they will just let the students with a higher academic skill to teach something which is teach something to other students, right? In that situation, those who have less academic skill cannot do it. They simply have no capacity to teach something to others, right? In that situation, we think this is very harmful. Why? Because the teachers will overly glorify those who have a capacity in the first place. In that situation, we think because of this thing, you are actually teaching the math or English to other people or so forth, right? No, thank you. Later, please. Because in that situation, people who have no ability, students who have no ability in the school will feel it. I'm the one who can actually succeed in school because teacher will never glorify me, and teacher actually try to glorify those kind of certain or so forth, right? In that situation, we think this would actually cause the polarization between those people who have academic skill and people who have less academic skill. In the government there's no other way to succeed in the other states. They will just instill like there is no other way to succeed in society, right? In this situation, there's actually just glorifying those who have free potential to succeed in society. That's why we say there will be polarization, and this will be harmful. Opening.
It seems to me that people who lack material capacity receive most respect on opening government. Because if success means to prioritize other than your social advancement material worth, then mother who take care of her child is successful in our society.
Okay. This will actually lead to my second argument, because you're standing assumption that those kind of narrative is you actually ignore who is actually creating those kind of social narrative in the first place. Moving on to my second argument, right? How education narrative will be operating in society. Assumption coming from the whole entire government case is that those narratives will work for minority or so forth, right? This is also the argument coming from the closing government. But we say that who creates those kind of education narrative or social narrative in the first place, right? We think those kind of people who who have authority in the society will actually create those kind of narrative. But for example, Ministry of Education or so forth, right? Those kind of people can actually arbitrarily create those kind of narrative. In those situations, we think this is a harmful. Opening government mentioned that the company's CEO will sacrifice themselves. We think this is a very doubtful characteristic in the first place. We think that those kind of CEO in the company, they are also authority in society. Even they can actually lobby to Ministry of Education to raise up the useful human resources in order those labor force to sacrifice themselves for their own company, right? Like in a situation, they can easily ignore those kind of narrative in the society, and because they are actually creating narrative. No, thank you. We think in a situation, nobody would because in a society, there actually nobody to supervise those kind of CEO whether or not they are sacrificing themselves in the first place, right? In a situation, rather those CEO would say and force those laborers to more sacrifice themselves, and you have to overwork. This is how you can succeed in society. This is how you can be boss in a society or so forth, right? In a situation, those CEO or rich in authority in the society will actually utilizing those more in order laborers to work for them in that situation, right? The closing government mentioned like the labor law is already prohibiting also forth. This is actually not happening in other states in the first place because those are the people because there are still people who have to overwork because the company and the government side actually perpetuate those kind of situations. We think that this is something that the government shouldn't do. Then if one cannot sacrifice themselves for the company, there will be huge backlash towards those kind of people, right? In a situation, you have to more sacrifice. Otherwise, you cannot be both. And if succeed, that's why we say in a situation, since those kind of backlashes will be harmful to each individual as well as the labor forces, we say that succeed shouldn't be measured only by level of sacrificing. This is very harmful, and this is not something that government can arbitrarily institute to the children as well as society. That's why we oppose.
Thank you, member. Petitioner for her some remarks. So I'd like to invite the government to conclude this round in 7 minutes. Go ahead.
Between the opening half debate. Opening government just pushed this so that we have those students has to be sacrificed for the benefit of the society. Then the opening opposition or the op bench actually talked about no, we have to respect the individual life of students. Closing government was the only one who was engaging to like the cases of the opposition side about how we have to even for like the individual's lives. So those students' individual lives, our side it's much more better because we sacrifice. We have like unconditional love to each other. That's why we create like the bonds that never exist in the opposition side paradigm. We think there are always times when people feel weak. For example, you feel like shit, and every time you like lose in like debating tournaments, or you're not able to study hard, or you have like bad relationships. We think even in those times, even if maybe other people, if you don't have this bond, other people will also think that you're shit. But we think that if there is an unconditional bond, then maybe like people will still love you, people will still listen to you, people will actually talk about. Try to care about you. And we think that those kind of support is something that only can exist in our side of the house. And we are the ones who are able to actually protect those like students. So that is why we're very happy to propose this motion. So I'm going to look at 2 levels of analysis. Firstly, I want to look at like the children's happiness, and secondly, I want to look at like the societal good. Before moving on to my point, I have reputation. One like clarification. Here. So like the opposition side said that those kind of sacrifice to some extent already exist in the state. So what's like really the difference? So we think that what this motion talks about is actively sacrifice yourself. So that means like even if there is no benefit for you to actually maybe listen to like people who are like being weak, you use your like time and love to sacrifice. We think that is something that actually emotionally moves other people to be friends with you. We think that is something that is unique because after all, in their pattern, maybe they're only like nice to other people because that person has a benefit for you. Maybe I'll become like a partner in their side. Maybe I'll become a partner with a strong debater because I can break in debates. But if that debater sucks, I'm not going to be any partners with that debater. We think that is something that exists in their side. In our side, even if that debater sucks at sometimes, we think that we are always like together or like we're always there to support us. So we think that kind of bond exists. And if I'm always like true to that person, if I always love that person unconditionally, that I will also be a great value to you. So that means that other person will also be willing to sacrifice their time and energy when I am weak. We think that kind of like mutual bond is something that is inclusive in our paradigm. Yes, ma'am.
In your paradigm, people who don't succeed, people who don't want to succeed by sacrificing themselves, will be marginalized by the entire community. In the context where we do have many people working hard, where we have many bonds, why do you have to instill this idea to every single person while marginalizing these people?
Firstly, we don't understand like your stance because you have to like oppose compulsory education in itself because compulsory education instills value, and we think that in the majority of the cases, everyone is supported by other person. So we think that in most of the times, you have to have friends, or you have to have parents, or you have to have like subordinates or bosses. You are always like dependent on other people to live and exist. We think in those kind of cases, like even soccer players are always supported by their fans or their parents or like their like friends or those kind of things. They also need mental support when they suck up maybe their games. And we think those kind of player sucks, everyone would just criticize him and he will feel so down. But in our canon, there's always like friends that will support him, so he can overcome that difficulty, and we think that's like a unique benefit even in our side. We think that compulsory education exists actually. If it's like majority of the people, it connects the majority of people with happiness. We think in most cases they are like government push those kind of values. That's why government makes people study, because studying in most majority of the cases makes you successful. We think that we think if this is like benefit of the happiness of the students, we think it is good. Like you are only like opposing, you're not like opposing to this motion, you're opposing to instilling one value, and that's not like the motion. So you're not unique at all. So no, thank you. I'm going to move on to my point. First, I'm going to talk about like the children's happiness. So first, well, I already refuted, but opening option talked about this is bad for people who don't want to sacrifice for something. And for example, soccer players. Well, we already refuted that. Even soccer players need friends and need someone to defend. So we think we are always like winning in this case. But like they said that they just assume that this sacrifice is only one-sided. But like your friend is also going to sacrifice for you. So that means like maybe if you, for example, that soccer player, if that person needs to like train hard for soccer, but doesn't want to do homework because he wants to train. Maybe if your friend is willing to sacrifice, he will actually teach you how to do well in homework. We think that is also beneficial for that soccer player. No, thank you. And then the closing option, I don't think this is for the extension because it's already said in the opening option. But they talked about there are people who are not able to sacrifice if there's a lack of resources or those kind of things. Firstly, that's not unique on their side. It's in our side, even in their side, like successful people or people who are rich, people who are rich and have more material. So we don't think that's something unique. But we think our side is much more beneficial because sacrifice is not only about resources. It's about also, for example, listening to your friend about what kind of problems you have, or always constant support and constant love. We think those kind of things is not something that you don't have any limits to those kind of things, and we don't think there's limitation of resources. Our side is much more better. And member of option talked about what about, for example, I don't have so much knowledge, so I can't sacrifice, for example, for teaching debating. There's other ways to sacrifice. For example, having a nice chat. We don't think that's a unique thing. Then they talked about this is actually going to push individual to work hard, and it's going to be a bad job environment. We think that the reason why some person is dying in jobs is because there is people are not actually willingly helping each other. We think in the States, so maybe the bosses just leave job at 5 p.m. but their subordinates are there until 10 p.m. We think that is not unwilling sacrifice. We think on our side, those bosses are more actively willing to sacrifice for their subordinates. So we think job environment or those kind of things are going to be much more better. Secondly, we think our side is able to achieve the best individual benefits and happiness for the children. So secondly, about societal happiness, well, we already told you that if people are nice to each other, people will be happy. So we think that we are able to eradicate the main cases of the opening option side. We are the ones that are able to create children's happiness. We're very happy.
Provide some remarks. I'd like to invite the opposition work to conclude this round of statements.
I want to answer two questions in my speech. Firstly, how about the people who cannot sacrifice themselves? What kind of people we're talking about? What is the harm? And secondly, what is the social impact of this narrative? So the entire this extension is uniquely important because nobody talk about except the skeleton opposition. Nobody talk about how these narratives operate in society. Who are the the people who mostly influenced by this kind of narrative, and who benefit most by utilizing this narrative. So, but before that, I want to engage with closing comment. So, closing comment say that by this kind of narrative, we have an unconditional love. So, 4 responses. Firstly, in the first place, in status quo, we naturally have natural incentive to care others. Now, that is the reason why CDS is so good place in the first place. So even without this kind of narrative, we have the affirmative action, we have the social welfare for the poor, and all scholarship for the immigrants. All this kind of narratives is, and all this kind of notion is already existing in status quo. Well, I can understand why this exclusive necessity to increase this kind of narrative by sacrificing the people who cannot afford to sacrifice themselves. So secondly, in the first place, this kind of unconditional love is seemingly unconditional, but it is truly not. It is truly conditional, because emotions say you can unconditionally love others for the success. If the person who love is not for the person, not important for the successful community, successful yours, you don't have to love that person. Therefore, we think that kind of love is not a healthy word. That kind of love, it actually marginalizes certain kinds of most vulnerable group in that kind of community. And certainly, we have to say, in the first place, we already have established the risk management framework to take up so many risky choices in your life. How is social welfare? Even if you are unemployed, you are failed to be an entrepreneur, you can be saved this kind of framework. Therefore, we think we don't understand, in order to take a risky choice, this kind of narrative that sacrificing vulnerable group is not necessary. So moreover, what is the harm is you can, in order to increase this additional unconditional love, you have to sacrifice the people who cannot have possessed anything, who don't have possessed anything to sacrifice themselves, who don't have any techniques or education to sacrifice or educate the others. We think these kind of people is much more important. I will further explain through the arguments. Sit down. So on to my first point. How about people who cannot sacrifice themselves? So we have the kinds of words this government side is displayed is that people who share and sacrifice themselves is automatically rewarded. For example, if Fujiti-san teach me, so Fujiti-san will be rewarded, so appreciated, and not me myself who are educated, who don't have nothing to do so, who don't have any ability to educate the Fujiti-san in the other way. So therefore, we have to recognize that only the people who can share, who have the ability to sacrifice themselves, can be appreciated in their side of house. But the problem is, without having anything, you cannot sacrifice anything. So therefore, to this point, opening opposition just talk about the people just focus about the poor people who don't have money, but closing opposition uniquely broader the actor who don't have enough capacity to sacrifice themselves. So how about 3 points? All examples. Sit down. How about techniques? The people who can have more techniques to sacrifice to teach the others is the people who have more opportunity to get education and who have more opportunity to go to university. How about the knowledge? So, people who have more knowledge to educate the uneducated person is that more ability to access the more information source, like ground school, like internet, like a site describing the highly sophisticated magazine, like economics, the time which probably good better subscribe. So therefore, we think certainly about time. So sacrificing time is also important. However, it is only possible. How about the poor people who are working for 24 hours in order to bring the food on the table to the next morning for the child? These kind of poor people don't have enough free time to sacrifice themselves. Therefore, we think these kind of narrative only cater to the reward for these kind of privileged groups of people. We think these kind of things have to be happening unilaterally. Sit down, please. So we think this is completely counterproductive to say with this kind of vulnerable group, because it decreases and it imposes stigma to who cannot sacrifice themselves. Therefore, the natural incentive to save the poor that existing status quo will rather decrease. We also counterproductive. More than that, these kind of people, poor people, or maybe who don't have enough capacity to sacrifice themselves, have not rewarded this goal. Therefore, they have less self-estimate, they have less confidence, which closing government wants to protect it. Therefore, we think that people who don't have capacity to sacrifice themselves will be necessary harm. So, before that, yes.
So, ethos of cooperation encourages more distribution. More importantly, engage the first material from Prime Minister that proves the current definition of success is a success on the basis of competitiveness, daily life, or libertarianism. And then how do you prove that this is something able to defend from what moral standard once again?
So, we have to recognize that regardless of this kind of media narrative like existing in status quo, we have to naturally have this incentive. Then what is going to prove in my second argument is this kind of media narrative, people who can create a media narrative, rather utilize this particular education narrative in the way they want to exploit the poor. So, what is how this narrative operates in the society? We have to recognize, because government just assumed this kind of narrative will work in the society in the favorable way for the poor. For more climate action, especially first, and more welfare for the poor, maybe the talking about the general global warming. However, we have to recognize, we think the rather operates for the rich. 3 layers analysis. Because one, dynamics of how narrative streams in society is very, very unilateral. However, in terms of media, they said, is a media owner create a media narrative in the way they want to the ordinary viewers. How the CEO, how the corporation, top of the corporation educate the lower workers in the way they want. So how about the politician in general public? Politician actually advocate policy and have more say to the general public, and general public is rather influenced unilaterally. Therefore, these kind of orderly, lower class people don't have capacity to rather utilize this kind of narrative. Moreover, we say, secondly, these kind of rich people anyway can ignore this kind of education narrative anyway. They can more opt out to the community, they opt out to narrative they want by current media narrative and so on and so forth. Therefore, we think this kind of rich has almost zero impact by this kind of particular education narrative anyways. Therefore, we think it was rather utilized in the way this kind of privileged people they want. Therefore, we think rather harms the vulnerable people or privileged people which ultimately want to protect. At the end of the day, in order to send this privileged group, this policy is rather counterproductive. That's the reason why we close the opposition, we proud of those. Thanks.
Thank you for the for his excellent remarks. That was always appreciated.